So now it's time to move on to the next session. That is banks, fintechs, and customer experience in a digital world. So this session is moderated by Avinash Godkhindi, MD and CEO, Zaggle. And on this panel, Avinash is joined by Dr. Jasmin B. Gupta, co-founder and CEO, LXME. Mr. Kumar, Shekhar, Vice President, Member Operations, Tide Platform Limited. Mr. Vaibhav, Joshi, co-founder and CEO, EasyPay. Please come on stage. Please welcome the panelists with a loud round of applause. So Avinash, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. So thank you to all the guests, thank you to FinTech Festival, and thank you to my co-panelists, Vaibhav, Kumar, and Jasmin, for taking the time out to make this an interesting session, which I'm sure it will be. So it's a very engaging topic and a very relevant topic. I think something which impacts all of us. And I'll begin by asking my fellow panelists to introduce themselves and make some opening remarks about this topic. And then I'll ask them a few questions. And at the end, we'll open up the floor for questions from you. Yeah? So, Jasmin, if you could introduce yourself, please. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmin Gupta. I am co-founder and CEO of Lakshmi. So while she said LXME, it's pronounced as Lakshmi. And we are building India's first financial platform for women. So it's going to be a neobank for women that we are building. I think it's a very interesting topic of discussion today. We are going to talk about banks, fintechs, and customer experience. I think customer experience is a lot more and beyond UI UX, and it's a sum total of the entire experience that the customer makes based on all the interactions that the customer has with your brand. So we'll discuss more about customer experience and how do we measure and what banks and fintechs, what role do they play as we move on with the discussion. Thank you.
Hello. Is my voice great? Thanks, first of all, FinTech Festival for having me here. I'm Kumar Shekhar, Vice President, Tide. Let me introduce first Tide, right? Tide is a UK-based FinTech serving to the SMEs, right? We provide basically a core banking solution in terms of current account, and then in periphery, we provide a lot of services to ease their job in terms of business and admin needs, for example, invoicing, accounting, lending, and everything. And now we have taken the journey towards various geographies, and India is one of them, the first country where the Tide is planning to expand. So the endeavor is to set up the business in India for SMEs, and soon we will see the product launch happening. Coming down to the topic, right? I think I will try to keep it as simple as possible. Today we are talking about startups building business, right? And as we build business, lot of functions, right? Creates hue and cry, screams, ask for their attention, right? And I will say it's vice versa also, right? Top, bottom, the focus is primarily on the different verticals like product or technology. And what gets missed is customer service. However, I will tell in today's world, customer doesn't expect us or the business to have just a customer service. They are expecting actually world-class, let me say and emphasize, customer service from us. In fact, a lot of shift of end customer is happening not on the best of the product, but on the fact that the service aspect is missing. And data backs it. 80% of the switch happens. So I will say apt topic to discuss, right, in today's forum. That's all.
Good morning, all. Vaibhav Joshi, I'm the co-founder and CEO of EasyPay. At EasyPay, we are building an embedded finance platform, a neobank sort of a thing for MSMEs, micro, small, medium enterprises. There are close to 63, 65 million MSMEs in India, and they are often the target group that gets ignored by banks. So the agenda with which I have joined EasyPay a few months back is to build a financial services platform for the MSME where it becomes a one-stop shop. Having said that, some background on me. I used to be the Chief Digital Officer with Equitas Small Finance Bank. Before that, I was the National Head for Digital Banking for Yes Bank for, donkey years. And before that, I've been an entrepreneur myself, so this is not my first startup stint. Coming to the topic, I think customer experience is the most critical aspect of any product today. It is that one thing that defines, that brings the customer to you, and that ensures that the customer is going to stick with your product. Okay, that is your entry gate and that is your exit gate. So having said that, I thank FinTech Festival for calling me to speak on this topic. This is a topic that is very, very close to me. I've been involved in launch of few neobanks in India in the past couple of years, a few payment PSP apps in the past 7-8 years, which are right at the top doing most transactions. So this is a topic that's very close to my heart, and I would love to talk on it. Thank you. Avinash, over to you.
So quick intro from my end, Avinash. Can you hear me better? Yeah. So Avinash Godkhindi, MD and CEO of Zaggle. An intro on my end. I don't know anything other than FinTech and banking. 22 years with banks and FinTech around the world. So about 12 countries, 5 continents. And last 10.5 years building Zaggle. So we are a SaaS FinTech company digitizing spends to drive growth and unlock value through automated workflows. We are one of the few profitable FinTechs at scale, healthily profitable, and at scale. We are one of the largest prepaid card issuers in India today. And now we have forayed into credit cards, marrying our SaaS products with our credit card offering with IndusInd Bank. Coming to the topic, I think it's extremely relevant. My co-panelists already touched upon all these points. The one thing that I would highlight is customer experience has become a hygiene factor today, right? Companies who do not offer a great customer experience just wither away over time. And taking that as a cue, I'd ask Kumar to share his thoughts as to why he believes customer experience has suddenly in the last maybe decade or so become so front and center in terms of expectations of all of us.
Sure, Avinash. I will say already we all have touched upon the importance of customer service, and there is no second thought that today none of the business can survive without a exceptional customer service. There are multiple reasons why ideally it's gaining importance. I will just touch upon a couple of them. For example, the growth and sustainability of the company cannot be there. The revenue can't increase. In fact, a couple of the research papers suggest that the company who has been focusing on customer service and their customer satisfaction scores are moving up. Directly, the revenues are moving up. It's a direct correlation kind of. Similarly, you talk about brand reputation, right? Your one satisfied customer takes it to many more customers, right? And without any marketing cost, right? And hence you will see every business is looking for app rating, right? Or positive reviews on social media, right? That's another. Retention, right? More satisfied customer, you are not supposed to spend more, right? They are by default your customer, and they tend to use your product more than the others, right? Just a basic example, right? We all, I think, carry 4-5 credit cards, or as you say, prepaid or a debit card, right? But how many times you use your credit card based on the offers available or the features, right? Primarily, you end up using 1 or 2, and that too on the experience what you have actually had with the organization, right? So these are like the major ones why the customer service is gaining importance today, and I think from here it will actually further be better day by day, and this is what my summation will be on this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Kumar. And I think one of the things that's happened, if you look at it, maybe 15, 20 years ago, if you look at the most valuable companies in the world, you had a Citibank, you had a Bank of America, and today it's all the Facebooks, the Apples, the Microsofts, the Amazons of the world. So it's clearly these are companies who have done more focusing on customer experience, leveraging tech, who've been able to, leapfrog their businesses to the top of the valuation charts. So Jasmin, you've spent a lot of time with banks. Would love to hear from you. Where do you think banks need help? And if they need help with customer experience, what are your thoughts and what can FinTechs do to work with banks to make that happen?
Thanks, Avinash. I think it's a very interesting question. And of course, I would like to share from my experience with banks. So I've spent lots of years with HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, and Equitas Bank all through last 2 decades. And yes, I think banks have also grown in customer experience. So we had a time when banks used to measure customer experience through the CSAT scores. However, in the last 5 to 6 years, we have seen NPS has taken over as the most prominent industry measure for measuring customer experience. And why not? Because NPS gives a macro and a micro level perspectives that can help banks improve customer experience at all the touch points of customers. So for example, NPS as a measure, of course, it has 2 segments. One is a relational NPS, which is the macro one, which tells you on a score of 1 to 10, would you recommend our product or service to your friends and family? It's just one question, which summarizes the customer's entire experience with your brand. Because only when the overall perception of the customer is great, the customer is going to recommend or become loyal and become an advocate for you, right? So that's the relational NPS. Coming back to the micro level, there is transactional NPS, which is what gets monitored and measured on a daily basis. Because this is the information which tells banks where is the improvement required at each stage of the customer journey. For example, you have done a fund transfer transaction. How was your experience with that fund transfer? So it's not one question, it's maybe 5 questions to understand how was the customer's fund transfer experience, one transaction with the bank, right? Now, a lot of insights come out of this data because when customers reply to this survey questions, you collect a lot of data. And there's lots of value in this data. Now, how to process this data, how to make use of it, how to make changes and improvements based on it is what banks definitely struggle with. So we've seen process re-engineering coming up in a big way, wherein the entire process, say for example, the process of account opening, yeah? What are the various loopholes in the process of account opening is some feedback which we get through transactional NPS. Now, all of this data will require process re-engineering for which the banks will maybe need RPA. So maybe FinTechs play a role there because banks will need FinTechs to help them with RPA. Also to give exceptional, professional, personalized customer experience, banks use data analytics very heavily. Yeah? So analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, these are also one of the segments where banks need help of FinTechs, where they collaborate together and come out with solutions that can help them offer personalized services. The third thing is trust. Trust is most important when it comes to customer experience, hence data security and all the technologies related to data security, all of that is very important where I think banks and FinTechs have a huge scope to collaborate. And I think the best thing for customers is to have an omni-channel experience. You are not okay with just one channel. I think customers want to talk to your brand through a customer service phone representative, through the net banking, through the phone banking, through the social media channels. They want to interact with you across all the mediums. And that's where I think there's lots that the banks can do in terms of improvement in customer experience. And that's where I think FinTechs also have a lot of role to play in enabling banks to ensure that they also support them in their journey of customer experience improvement.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jasmin. Coming to you, Vaibhav, you've spent a lot of time with banks and who have been pioneers in working with FinTechs. What's worked, what's not worked? What has your experience been both at Yes and Equitas with FinTechs? And how do you think that has helped the customer experience of Yes and Equitas customers? Can you share some light, please?
Guys, am I audible? Well, I couldn't hear some of my fellow panelists earlier. So thank you, Avinash. See, I believe that, whenever you're developing a platform, whenever you're developing a product, especially from the bank's point of view, you need to do it in such a manner that your partner FinTech should be able to adopt it in the most, simplest of the manners. Agility becomes the key over there. Any go-to-market of a product depends on the integration and the renderation of the digital journeys. So the simpler they are, the better they are. But before I talk about that, Avinash, let me spend some time on, because we are talking about customer experience, how across various segments, a few of the products which we have launched helped, in this space. So I was yesterday listening to one of the videos on LinkedIn of, our Prime Minister, and he was making a statement. And his statement was that in the month of May, on UPI, we did 2,200 transactions in 1 second. We did, as a country, 130,000 transactions in 1 minute. Now, how was it possible? And then, it struck to me that, that was possible because of the simplicity of the customer experience that UPI as a product provides. Okay. I'm sure a lot of us have seen those days when to make a credit card payment, there used to be this machine where they would put a paper folio, they would put your card on top of it, and they would, swipe your card and bring it back, and the imprint of your credit card would go on that, paper, and then they would take your signature. There was no real-time online kind of a thing, and I belong to those days. I'm quite young, but I still belong to those days where I've seen this at least. Now, look at that customer experience vis-a-vis what we do over here. Okay, today, you just walk into the cafeterias and tap and the payment is done, right? And look at the difference in the customer experience. The product has evolved. The customer experience has also evolved. You go overseas where there is no second factor authentication needed. You can just tap your credit card and your payment is done. Here we have a second factor auth. So anything above 5,000 you have to put in a PIN. That's okay. That's from a security perspective. You move on from, and UPI today, the technology has become so amazing that we have started exporting it. If not customer experience, then what is it? I ask. It is actually the customer experience, the customer convenience. You scan, payment done. You have dynamic QR, you have static, both. Okay. Coming to your question, Avinash, and sorry, I didn't want to dwell much, but that's a point I wanted to really touch upon. Across multiple products, we talk about prepaid that, I used to do with you. You are on the other side of the table. Yes Bank, I was on the other side of the table. Two, liabilities, where we launched a neobank in the form of NeoX, the fastest growing neobank in the country. Two, coming to more sophisticated products like digital lending, which I am now doing at EasyPay. I think the key is, how you are able to create the digital journeys in a manner where your APIs are consumed by your FinTech partners and then they are able to render the solution in the simplest of the manners. Let's talk about, NeoX, where we did a digital savings account. We were able to open a digital savings account online in under 2 minutes. Okay, the record time that we did was, just 1 second under 2 minutes, and you could actually download the app, you could open your account. For a full KYC, initially it was Aadhaar OTP-based KYC. Again, all APIs working at the back end. And then you could book a request and somebody would just come into your home, take your biometric, full KYC done. And now it has migrated to video KYC. So the renderation of a savings account, the simplest of the products, which earlier you used to go to a bank branch, or if you are a privileged customer, you would get a relationship manager come into your home or your office, fill out a few forms, okay, or fill out forms on the tab, what Jasmin was talking about, RPA assisted models, and then again it would take some time. Here we are talking about under 2 minutes account opening. You all heard of Kotak 811. It is the best example of how a great customer experience driven product can work for you. And now let's talk about digital lending, what we are trying to do at EasyPay on the MSME front, in addition to payments and liabilities. So imagine, a MSME, a micro retailer, wants to go for a loan. And trust me, a micro retailer going for a loan is a big thing, because there are loan sharks who give him loan at 2.5%, 3% per month. Those are the interest rates that are going on in the market. And then, this poor guy, because most of those loans are unsecured loans. And this poor guy has to, go through a plethora of, forget the harassments, but the plethora of things to even get that thing approved. And the loans that actually happen in that segment, and look at, before we come to customer service, the customer harassment that this guy has to go through loan shark is, I have seen a customer who had to get his wife pledge that मैं promise करती हूँ कि मेरा पति loan repay करेगा. Today's times. And then talk about digital lending platforms that have really turned around, brought in products, and the customer experience, customer services is like this, where I think we have Perfios team over here as well. The Karza APIs, at the back end, they will just, create a credit algorithm, credit score for this guy. If there is a bureau data, fantastic. If there is no bureau data, there are alternate data points based on which a financial profile gets created. And within a minute, you have a scorecard in front of you which says that, that retailer is okay to be given a credit, may not be at 1.5%, 1% per month, but definitely his credit worthiness, if you can give it at 2.25% a month. And he's more than happy, because there is no social stigma. He doesn't have to go to the loan shark. He doesn't have to be bothered about the harassments. Okay, and it's a digital-only loan that actually gets fulfilled right into his wallet or into his bank account. And the experience is 90% of these requirements are actually within the ecosystem. Because वो बेचारा परचूनी की दुकान वाला अपने सप्लायर से सामान लेने के लिए लेने का ट्राई करता है. Okay, he has a 30-day credit, he wants additional 30-day credit. Look at the customer experience part of it over here, Avinash. Few APIs working at the back end, and those APIs actually, automate that entire experience in such a manner that under 2 minutes, tuck, 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 1, 2, 3, go. Over to you, Avinash.
Kumar.
Yeah, thanks. Just to add, right, I think I heard Jasmin and Vaibhav both, right, some interesting points put across. Primarily, it's a pre-onboarding journey I heard of, right, how FinTech has collaborated with the bank to simplify the onboarding journey. I think most of us, we are doing it by simplifying the identity checks like video KYC or Aadhaar authentication. It's all good. But I have got a different perspective, and I will share a couple of real-life examples, right? My personal perspective is the traditional financial setup in India and the bank. Let's admit the fact they need a lot of collaboration, right? Technology, fine, a couple of things they are doing it good, but the reality is how good we are serving them post onboarding the customer, right? The churn rate is too high, right? How many times, even in towards a FinTech, what is the customer who are actually using your product after 3 months? Maybe 10%, right? 90% is out of like your portfolio, and that's the churn rate you back in the business, right? Okay, sorry, my bad. Just a couple of things I will say and add up what traditional financial setup and the bank needs to do, right? And those are very basic in nature. Technology will come at a later stage, right? For example, the first and foremost, right? Empowerment is needed, right? Empower your employee at the right stage to take a decision to solve the problem of the customer, what they are facing, right? That's the most needed one. Change the response from being a reactive customer service provider to a proactive one. And I will give you a real life example. My father-in-law and mother-in-law are like in 80s. They have been using the traditional banking setup for ages, right? One day they asked me that they are not earning good interest rate, right? Recently it was 2.5%, 2.75% in the banking. And they asked me, son, can you actually transfer it to the private bank and try to get me a rate of 5-6%? I said, fine, give me your mobile. I tried using that, right? And I was not able to make the transaction. I called their customer service on behalf, kind of. And they said, they can't help me. For everything, you have to walk down. And this is the standard response you get in today's banking and traditional fintech, or traditional financial setup. So the post facto is very poor. I was asked to visit bank. Though they are 80 years, I took them to the branch. They said something which was new for me to learn. They said, if you don't transact every 3 months, your account gets deactivated, and you need to do a fresh KYC to activate your account. This kind of customer service we are living in today's era. So we can talk of all the simplification, but the reality is something different on the ground. A lot of support traditional financial setup the banking needs, right? The proactiveness here could have been with a lot of data analytics back then, that if someone's account is not being transacted for 3 months, right, and you feel that his or her account will get deactivated, why didn't you reach? You could have communicated to your customer who is keeping a good balance with you, sir, your account is about to get deactivated. Please make a transaction, right? Or else you will have to go through a painful journey. Ideally, that is a proactive customer service. So I will say we are a fintech. I think India is leading in that, no doubt about it. But we are simplifying too much on the pre side of the world, and it's time to think upon the post side as well when it comes to the customer service.
Great points, Vaibhav and Kumar. And,
so Avinash, before just 30 more seconds,
yes, please
complete the answer, because something came to my mind that is very much related to, the renderation of a bank plus fintech product on the customer experience side. And guys, for those of you who don't know, so me and Jasmin, we used to work together in Equitas, and we launched NeoX. So one fantastic, a fantastic feature from a customer experience point of view that was there in that product. And we were there in NeoX office. We had a meeting with Vinay, Viren, and everyone. And we had Tushar, who was to be the product manager. So he was looking at his NeoX. And the moment I came in, he just waved his hand like this. In front of the phone camera, he just waved his hand. Something happened. Everything was, the app is green, so it was all green. And I was like, Tushar, kya kiya tumne? So he was like, he did like this. And I suddenly saw his balance. He did like this, and the balance went away. And I was like, wow, what was that? So he's like, Vaibhav, often what happens is, we are in a public place. We are looking at our bank balance through an app. And then suddenly we realize there are so many prying eyes who are looking into our app. So, if you see somebody coming in, you just wave your hand in clockwise direction in front of the camera, and the balance goes away automatically. You wave it in an anti-clockwise manner, balance comes back. Okay. There are multiple APIs that get called. There are multiple, algorithm-based, things that are put into the code over there. But look at the rendition. It is like this and this. The balance comes in, balance. That is the power of customer experience.
Fabulous example, Vaibhav. So I wanted to actually pick up on the point that Kumar made of customer journeys after they're onboarded, right? And while Vaibhav gave a very good example of how that can continue to be, enhanced, and this is really cool. So I'm going to have to try this now until you pique my interest. Jasmin, wanted to ask you, why do you think some customers or users end up having to vent their frustration on social media? What is the power of this medium? Why has this medium become so important? I've seen brand after brand who've not addressed the concern of a particular customer for months, but the moment the escalation comes onto social media, within hours it gets addressed. So I'd like you to touch upon why social media has become so important, what is so special about it, and what are fintechs and banks doing, or what should they be doing to better leverage this medium?
Yeah, I think in today's time, of course, social media cannot be ignored. And while we have lots of methods of collecting customer feedback, there is a social media available for the customers to share their feedback as and when they want to. So I think whether it's a bank or a fintech, it's very important to have a very good, strong social media strategy in place to manage customer feedback and also to proactively engage with the customers on various social media channels so as to get the branding for the product right. Now, before I get into what more we can do with social media, let me share some example of what we do at Lakshmi. So at Lakshmi, so there are three major things that are required for a differentiated customer experience. So the first thing that they say we should do is educate the customer. Yeah. So what we do at Lakshmi is, Lakshmi started as a Facebook community. So it actually started with social media. Of course, it has now an Instagram community, it's a Twitter community, it's an app where the community exists on the app itself, right? Now, we started with educating the customer through money coaches. So in Lakshmi, we have money coaches who actually answer the customers' queries on the community, guide them, conduct boot camps, workshops on finance and money, so as to help women come up the financial literacy curve. Because women as a segment, we all know, while we say Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth, women and wealth have mostly stayed very far away from each other in India, right? So to bridge that gap, we do a lot of financial literacy sessions. We enable women to come up the curve on learning about finance and money, how to manage, how to budget, how to go about making their investments. So that's the first step. The second step is to make it easy. The customer experience has to be extremely easy for your target segment. And hence, now if you look at the investment world in India, of course it's very complicated. In mutual fund industry itself, we have 400 mutual fund schemes across 25 mutual fund houses, and it's very, very difficult for anyone to make any investment decision. And think of women who have never invested. Yeah? So what we do is we make investment decisions very easy for them. We have curated portfolios by a well-designed wealth research team, which is a set of 4-5 investment schemes which matches a particular goal. So for example, we have a child education fund, we have a retirement fund, we have a tax planning fund, we have an emergency fund, right? So as a woman, I don't need to think of the hundreds of schemes that I need to invest in. I can make a decision, okay, I want to save for my retirement, this is where I need to invest, which is a portfolio consisting of 4-5 schemes, which will help me achieve that goal. I am planning for my child's education. I want to send him abroad. I need 1 crore after so many years. This is the funds. This is the fund where I need to invest in. It comprises of whatever funds which the research team has decided upon. We have calculators, which actually help them plan the amount, what is the amount you need to save on a monthly basis, on a daily basis to achieve that goal. So we make the entire customer experience very easy. And third, we have a very vibrant community where women can talk. Women love to talk. Yeah? They want to have conversations. They want to ask people, is this right? Is this wrong? Should I do this? Should I not? Is this the best thing? So they want to talk. They want to have conversations on money. They want to know things. And hence we have a community where all these conversations go on. We have contests going on. We have financial houses going on the app where women can play and learn. So it's an entire gamification experience where women learn with playing on the app, and that's when they start their investment journey. And they start small. They start with as small as 100 rupees. So that's the option that we give them. Start your investment journey with as small as 100 rupees and then build up. And we've seen women becoming confident. They share on the community that now we are confident that we can make more investments, right? So that I think that entire social media management on the community is extremely important. And we have evangelists. We have money coaches. We have train the trainer programs. We have women from the community who have come forward and become money coaches, who have come forward and become evangelists, and who are now training other women. We have influencers. These influencers actually play a very important role in your social media management because they are the ones who bring a lot of knowledge-centric content on your social media. So while on one side, you are addressing the complaints that the customers are putting in, you are proactively responding to them, you are proactively solving their issues. On the other side, you are also proactively educating and engaging constantly with your community, with your customers, so as to ensure that they stay connected with your brand. That engagement and retention gets addressed.
This is really wonderful. I wasn't aware of this level of experience that you have built on Lakshmi. So congratulations for that. Wonderful. So the last question, which I'll open for all three of you, but starting with you, Kumar, is given the complex world, VUCA world that we live in, how do you see regulators and regulation impacting customer experience and this whole landscape? And what are your thoughts on some of the most recent initiatives that the regulator has taken in this regard?
Sure. I think very relevant and pertinent question, right? Our regulator is quite active these days, right? Too many circulars coming on. And personally, I have been a big fan of Indian regulators. I support them, right? They have been way advanced than any of the regulators across the world, right? They have been ensuring that the end customers are taken care of, their interests are safeguarded. At the same time, the product innovation doesn't die. And pick any of the area, and you will find that happening, right? I will give you a classic example, right? Look at PAPG industry, right? After 10 years of evolution of the product, the RBI actually regulated it, right, recently. And was much needed. The recent most talked about openly is like the credit line on the PPI, whether it's possible or not. But look at the customer plight. While they are using the product, they are not aware that it's a loan and their CIBIL score is getting impacted. So I will support the regulators are doing amazing job in India. They are ensuring that be it FinTech or any of the financial services, provide the right set of services to ensure the safety, security of the end customer. I generally quote a good example, right? We have good amount of time. I will just take 2 more minutes and I will cite why I am a big fan of regulator, why the regulation should exist, right? And from a personal life, I will give you an example. After 8 years of marriage, right, I was blessed with twin daughter, right? And I was super, super happy, right? I thought I will never tell them no for anything. Let them do anything under the sky. But I realized after 3-4 years, when they are turning 4, that it's not the right thing, right? I have to step in at too many points, guiding them, telling them what are the boundaries, right? Maybe they will learn on their own. But this is what the regulators are doing. So a big, I will say that the fantastic journey with the regulators so far, they are very proactive, I will say. They are not reactive, they are proactive, and but they are doing everything best for the ecosystem.
I agree. So with that, folks, we are done with our set of questions, unless the panelists have some comments to make. And I would like to open up the floor now for questions. The lady there first, yeah. Both of you, one after another, yeah. Can somebody pass on a mic, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Gitika. The question is more on the other side of customer experience. What about creating nuisance for customers with over-communication? I think all of us agree that we get a lot of emails and communication from our banking partners, right? I am a bank customer, but that does not necessarily mean that the bank needs to talk to me every day. So how would you guys advise that banks need to maybe change their strategy about over-communication?
So my view on that would be switch your bank, right? If your bank is over-communicating to that extent that it's becoming a nuisance, I think the simplest way in which customers can respond is to take their money elsewhere. And I'm very serious about this, because ultimately you're right. It can become a nuisance, and There are banks who are much more responsible about it, and there are other banks who are not, right? So that would be my view, but I'll...
So let me answer that, Gitika, right? So all the banks and financial service providers are filled with zealous business managers who have targets, and at the end of the day, they want to upsell and cross-sell within their database. Now, if you are within a bank or a financial service provider's database, then you are bound to get upsell and cross-sell calls, because as a banker, let me tell you, what you get classified as is a existing ETB customer, existing to business customer, and existing to business customer is the first target customer for any kind of internal campaigns that get run. You cannot escape it if your database is within the CBS, if your data is there, and if you qualify as a TG for a particular campaign, number one. Having said that, forget the banks or fintechs with whom you're banking with or transacting with. Even if you give your database on a magic bricks, it gets sold. And the next thing you get after 3 days is 15 calls from Bajaj FinServ in a day. Okay, so even if you're not a bank's customer, it will still happen. So the best way to do it is have two numbers. Have two numbers. One number, have it where you give it to these kind of people. Second number, family, friends, and hardcore banking. This is tried, tested after 2 decades of, suffering all these things personally.
So, just to add, it was a good suggestion, right? But we will have to think, right? Will it work really, right? So let's talk something which is more realistic, right? I will say, let's look at why we communicate, right? Or any of the fintech or bank communicates, right? There are reasons for that, right? One can be regulatory, which I was just talking with the last topic, where it's a guideline, right? Can the fintech or banks skip that? The answer is no. And in fact, as an end customer, I will say I will love that communication to happen. Many a time we escalate, right? Have you ever spoken to me? And then they can actually refer to that mail that, sir, on so and so date, we actually triggered that mail, right? So that's one. Second, obviously, I was talking about the data analytics, right? We all use and make. We are not denying that fact, right? And we, looking at the profile, all the analytics, we do the cross-sell. We are not denying. What is, and that's a very, I will say, amazing question, right, put across. As any business entity, leave it, whether it's a fintech or a bank or a financial institution, make it more interactive between the bank and the customer. Give them the button, right? Whether you want a further communication on this topic or not, and switch the trigger out there, right? In fact, that's based on this, I made a solution for block and unblock of the credit card while you are traveling. And today everyone is using. I made that solution 6-7 years back. So I can take pride in that. And hence I will suggest it's for everyone to ponder upon. It's a very sensitive topic. But should the communication stop? Should we have two numbers? I don't know. But the real answer is make it more interactive. Let customer choose whether they want a message from us or not. And we do and respect their decision.
Thank you. The next question there, the lady, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your thoughts on customer experience. I'm Neha Kumar from Dow Jones. And Avinash, actually a follow-up to your question to the panel, regulators. I think Kumar clearly mentioned about re-KYC being a horrid experience. Banks obviously have a certain maturity with regulatory compliances, and they have set processes. FinTech is being spoken a lot about by the regulators on what FinTechs should do. Should they do something? Should they not? Do you think regulatory compliance customer experience can take precedence over regulatory compliance, specifically for FinTechs, because it adds a certain layer of TAT when it comes to customer onboarding? And how do these two kind of coexist while regulators are worried about what actually ends up with the customer? So it'll be great to have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'd like to answer that. So you're right. Customer experience and compliance both need to exist hand in hand. There's no two ways about it, right? Having said that, yes, the regulator is strict in certain aspects, but it is required. So for example, if I have to share my experience of NeoX, the digital accounts are a great way of enhancing your customer base. Yeah? You are daily growing by 10,000 customers, 20,000 customers a day. That's a very good growth rate for any bank, for any fintech. Having said that, I think the number of frauds that happen are also on a high because people have lots of nice ideas and thoughts all around as to how to, find loopholes within the entire ecosystem and figure out ways of creating frauds. So we have fraudsters opening multiple accounts, and we have fraudsters transferring small amounts from one account to another account, and it's an entire chain of transactions that keeps on happening. We have a lot of police complaints that get fined. I think the number of STRs, which are the suspicious transaction reports that we need to file with the RBI, it actually increased 100x when we went digital. But these are the things that come along with going digital. And I think as we go along, we find solutions. So we find solutions of SIM binding, device binding. We find solutions of how to get the right customer in through tracking his social media footprint so that we get only the target segment that we want to bank with us, right? So there are a lot of ways in which we can put in place these fraud control measures. And having said that, I think the regulator is fantastic. They have now a FinTech department which actually looks into all the activities that the FinTech does. They want to know what kinds of innovations are happening. And I think they're also, through the Innovation Hub, they are also participating in all these innovation activities along with FinTechs, right? So there are lots of hackathons that we see where the regulator is so well involved. So I think it has to go hand in hand. There's no two-way about it. And we will, obviously, as we move forward in this journey, we will always, I think it's an ongoing journey.
Yeah, just one point to add. So regulation is the rule set, right? You cannot circumvent regulation. And the regulator is also extremely keen to enhance customer experience. I mean, if you look at it, things like UPI have come in because of NPCI. NPCI is essentially also the brainchild of RBI in some ways, right? So, and to add to what Jasmin was talking about, hackathons, etc., the sandbox effort. So we've qualified for the MSME digital sandbox, for example. A lot of insight comes in from the regulator. So it's not that the regulator is not worried about the customer journeys and the experience. They are extremely worried. But if they have to prioritize, they prioritize security ahead of experience. You had a question, I think. I think we have time for one last question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, we have pretty much charted down our customer experience with regards to onboarding. I want to know your thoughts on what would be the we have seen that there's a pretty bad customer experience with regards to offboarding when we switch from one app to another, or we stop using services of certain apps. Could you throw some thoughts how we can improve that?
See, I think, again, it depends from brand to brand. Certain brands make it extremely difficult, and that links to what I was asking Jasmin on social media, right? When consumers don't get the offboarding experience that they want, already they are upset with you, and if you make their offboarding experience difficult, they're going to be doubly upset with you, right? So I think it's a bad strategy, and I do believe that a lot of responsible fintechs and banks do recognize that. They do tend to allow for offboarding to happen fairly seamlessly today. There could be traditional players or some old school players who may not be looking at it that way, but look, all these things, eventually, the customer is the king, right? She rules, she decides, and as consumers start to move away from one platform to another, it becomes very obvious, where the future lies. So I think the free markets and the customers will ultimately dictates a lot of the way the ecosystem evolves. And I think if consumers continue to move away from brands who make offboarding difficult, sooner than later, folks will recognize that.
So with that, thank you so much for joining us today. And Vaibhav, that Bajaj FinServe point, I think you just can't escape them. They seem to find a number somehow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and making this, this session super interesting. Thank you so much.